Consequence. And learning theory does not acknowledge the construct of immaturity and development, and it does not acknowledge emotion. And so we took away the most important parts of this. Most of the problems that children have are either a result of immaturity or a result of a result of emotional problems. And so those things, you can't address immaturity in a moment, in a situation. I mean, many of us would like to say to our children, grow up, but it never works. We can't command it, we can't teach it. It's something that must unfold spontaneously. It takes time. That's why when we say, what should I do when? We're missing the whole point of this. What can I do in this situation that doesn't harm the relationship? It doesn't harm their natural processes by which they would come to this. Children would mature. Maturity will take care of all of these things. Civilized functioning. It will take care of virtues and character. That's all part of integrative functioning. So we need to ask ourselves. I always say to teachers, when I'm training teachers, in terms of there's a student with no adaptive functioning, no integrative functioning. They never think twice. They're impulsive, and they can't go from bad to sad. And then I say, well, he's always getting into trouble at recess in the lunch hour. What am I? What can I do that will teach him a lesson? And I always ask, well, how long is it going to take for you to learn your lesson? Well, the child can't handle recess. He doesn't have the adaptive integrative functioning to handle what's happening at lunch hour. He can't handle this or that. When are you going to learn? You see, we need to learn our lessons. Well, I had a parent who came to me once and said their 3-year-old had struck somebody else in the sandbox over with a shovel. And they said, well, is my child going to be a psychopath? Are they full of aggression? I think your child is just fine. But what in the world was the shovel doing, or that kind of shovel, in the sandbox? And if your child can't handle it, it was our business not to put it there. I think it's very important for us to ask ourselves the question, what lesson have I learned here? What lesson have I learned? What cannot my child handle? Where is the frustration too much? Where are they too impulsive? Where they're not ready yet? And what can I do to keep them out of trouble? What can I do? And I say to teachers, okay, what can you do? Can you keep the child out of recess? No, not as punishment. No, graduate them to be a library assistant or something. You can always put a spin on this. But it's important to do what you can do to be able to keep the child out of trouble. We've got to give nature a chance. We've got to give nature a chance to be able to deal with these underlying issues, integrative functioning, to be able to get their feelings back, to soften their heart. We need to be able to do this. These will take care of most of the problems. Meanwhile, what can we do to assume the responsibility? And if we don't believe they can handle something, if they're not being able to handle their digital screens, if they're not being able to handle the television, something else, then it's not for us to punish them for this. We shouldn't be surprised that they get addicted, just like we get addicted to it. In fact, digital connection is just as addictive as alcohol and cigarettes. We won't put that in the hands of our children. What in the world are we doing with digital intimacy? Most of us can't even handle our inboxes. And yet, we expect them to do this, and we discipline them when they don't. Discipline never worked for us in that matter. What we need to do is say, how can I be a responsible parent? What do I need to do what action do I need to take that would be in the best interest of my child? If I believe that this shouldn't be what they're doing right now, then what am I doing here? And I don't need their understanding to do this. Nor should I be afraid of upset. It's my responsibility as a parent. You see, so many times we're trying to use discipline when we're escaping personal responsibility. We're trying to get them to change when we're simply not taking the responsibility to do the lonely thing as a parent, to do what we believe is in their best interest even when they won't understand. But that's our parental responsibility. We need to assume it. Thirdly, and this is so key, always treat your child as if they want to be good for you. Every single child has within them the instinct to be good, but it only comes in the context of attachment. When the attachment is healthy enough, when they're deep enough attached, and when their attachment instincts are engaged. If I would phrase the question a different way, when parents come to me, and often I have, they say, are you asking the question, how do I get my child to be good? Oh, yes. Don't like that language, but yes, I'm asking the question, how do I get the child to be good? Good for me, good at school. How do I get a child to be well-behaved, to be good? I said, that's not really the issue. The issue is not how to get a child to be good. The issue is, does your child want to be good for you? Does your child want to be good for you? Just like I get asked the question, how do I get my child to dress themselves? And that isn't the issue. The issue is, does your child want to dress themselves? Parents ask me, the fact here is that when a child is well attached, by the time they get to 2 or 3 years of age, basically 3 years of age, is when the instincts to be good absolutely come there. If the child is attached through belonging and loyalty to you, they take your side on things, they want to make things work for you, and that's where the natural instinct is there. It's all a fruit of attachment. But if we do not honor it, if we, by our interaction with the child, say, I see that, in effect, I can't count on you wanting to be good for me, so I know that you're really attached to this or that, and if you aren't behaved, I'll take that away from you. We are actually insulting their relationship with us and insulting their desire to be good. And why would a child want to be good for us when we don't honor that? Even when I was working with the delinquents, I always honored that. Because if you didn't act as if it were true, it would never become true. And that's so important. That's the thing I value about my father. He was incredible. He was a disciplinarian, he was. There was still the spanking, at least very early in my years, and there were strong rules. But he always believed in my desire to be good. And when that felt honored, it didn't erode that place. He could believe in the relationship. This is all you need, really. You don't need heavy-handed discipline. This is all you need. And again, it stems from the relationship. When the child is in right relationship, there are so many aspects of it to look up to defer to attend to listen to take the cues from, to model after, to conform to avoid alienating. All of these aspects, including to be loyal to make things work for, to take the side of, to find favor with, to measure up to seek to please, to assume the values of, to share secrets with. These are all aspects of this. This is precious. This is like gold. And then I would ask parents, tell me, can you feel within your child that desire to be good for you? And then sometimes parents will say, oh my goodness, no, I don't. I said, well, this isn't a discipline problem. This is a relational problem. This is a relationship problem. We were never meant to manage to raise children whose hearts we did not have. That was the whole reason for attachment. They must be attached to us. They must fall into attachment, but they must give us their hearts. When we have their hearts, there is that desire, and that's all we need. We can count on it. We can go to the bank on it. That doesn't mean they'll be good all the time. There's immaturity they'll trip over. They will forget. There'll be all kinds of things that they'll be trip over, but at least if they want to be good, they'll get there. They'll get there. But if they don't, nothing will work. We're so busy trying to get good behavior, we've lost our insight about where it comes from. It's no different than us as adults. Unless we're aiming for something, we're not going to get there. This desire to be good is, again, a function of the relationship, and it needs to be honored. When you have it, you know where your natural power lies. You know what you can count on in your child, but it's important to work inside of that, not outside. When your relationship is best, too many of us work where the problem areas are, rather than when the relationship is the best. It's when the relationship is best that we should try to bring them on side with the values, with the things that we're concerned about, with the confrontations, and so on. Fourth, the problem with discipline and the problem with difficult behavior is its threat to the relationship. It's so important to not let either problem behavior or discipline break the connection. Because when it breaks the connection, it erodes the relationship. Part of a relationship is when a child is attached to us, when a child has a relationship to us, it's our responsibility to make sure that nothing breaks that connection. It's our responsibility to make sure that the relationship is communicated as more important than the problem behavior. I call this bridging. The bridging comes from a very simple ritual we have in our society, is that when we face separation with each other, because humans don't deal well with separation, what we intuitively do with our friends is we bridge it. We put the focus not on the separation, but the next point of connection. To either what stays the same or the next point. This is the goodbye ritual. In English, it isn't goodbye is a dreadful word, but it used to be God be with you until we meet again. And au revoir in French works perfectly. See you again. Auf Wiedersehen. And in Spanish, what? Yes, the seeing, right, not the adios. This is bad as goodbye, right? It's the see you again. Why? Because that's the whole bridging. That's the whole point. When a relationship is important, when anything would come in between, it's always putting the focus on the next connection. That is the secret of the bedtime for the young child. You put the focus on the next connection. I'll see you in my dreams. I'll be back in a few minutes with another hug for you. I've got your favorite breakfast ready. I'll have your favorite breakfast ready for you in the morning. Always the focus on the next connection. And if a child can only handle tiny little separations, you make sure they're only tiny little bridges all the way until the child relaxes and can take bigger bridges. That bridging is the most important thing, is that when we won't let anything divide us. And the problem, see, children don't come into this world to say, oh boy, I'm so glad I have parents who can tell me right from wrong. What is good and what is good behavior. I'm so glad I have them to give me a compass point to life. No. They come in this world wanting one thing, contact and closeness. And if everything goes right, they see their parents as their answer for belonging, for love, for togetherness, for significance, for this. So that's what they're thinking. And so when you have those daggers in your eyes, when you have a stern voice, when you say that's not allowed, that's not the way to speak to your sister, they don't hear this, oh goody, I'm learning my lessons now. That's not what they're thinking. They're thinking, oh no, Daddy doesn't like me. Mommy doesn't like me. They're always thinking relationally. That's the way we are with each other. When we confront each other, the issue is not the confrontation, the issue is the relationship. And they're much more that way. That's why it's so important, always. So again, I'll answer that question. I get asked over and over again, well, what should I do when my child misbehaves? And I said, well, if you throw in the infraction flag, if you said that's not the way to express your frustration to your sister, we don't use those words in our house, you know, people are not for hitting, or whatever it is that you say, the next thing that needs to come out of our mouth is a bridging thing. Don't you worry, I'm still your dad. We'll be okay. I'm looking forward to watching the soccer game with you this evening. I'm looking forward to dinner. And when we say that, we put the focus on the next connection, the child breathes a sigh of relief, because we've said the relationship is bigger than the problem. Same in school. In school, we have to teach to the class. But individuals sometimes disrupt us, and we have to send them out of the class to the office. And so I'm not saying that we don't do this. Sometimes we need to do this. Or we need to use discipline, or we need to suspend them to be able to preserve our alpha, to underscore some values. All of these things are true. But if we're wanting to preserve the relationship between the student and the teacher, it's so important that the teacher can convey, don't you worry, I'm still your teacher. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. I've got a favorite class plan or a favorite exercise plan that I know you'll like. You put the focus on the next return. And what it says to the child is the relationship survived the incident, is bigger than the problem. And when the relationship is healthy, the child still desires to be good. And then the adaptive process is there. All of it will come. But we're so busy trying to say behavior is the bottom line. It's not the bottom line. Relationship is the bottom line. If a child falls out of right relationship with us, we don't have anything left. We've got trouble. We've got all kinds of trouble. And they lose our feelings. We've got trouble. If we don't, it's not the behavior. Bridging is incredibly important. Oh, the bridge washed out here, but you're supposed to imagine it. It just was, it's way in the background. But bridging, when facing separation, preserve the connection by drawing attention to what stays the same and the next point of contact. This is always the same. You see, we have the right intuitions. But we need to know this applies to behavior. Those of you that have precocious 3 or 4-year-olds, and that precocious 4-year-old realizes that something bad might happen to you. Mommy, when something bad happened to you, might you die? We don't say to them, well, yes, I guess you've understood your existential insecurity, and yes, we're out of control of these things in life, and yes, in fact, bad things could happen to me. Good luck with this. No. Intuitively, we know children must never face separation. It's not that something bad might not happen to us. They can't handle that yet. Our job is not to push their face in it. Our job is to be able to bridge that understanding. And so if you have any intuitions about you at all, and most of us will in that situation, our answer is very simple. Don't you worry, honey. I'll always be your mother. Which is true, dead or alive, but we don't go to that part. Don't you worry, honey. I'm not planning on going anywhere. Which is true, but we don't tell them that our plans have relatively little to do with reality. You see, the point is we help them hold on. And that's the point. And when discipline and problem behavior comes in between, if they are sent to their room because we can't handle our temper, because if we're yelling, if we're doing other things, then as soon as we can, it's important to bridge both the problem behavior and the discipline. I'm still your mom, I'm still your dad, I'm still your teacher, we'll be okay. I'm looking forward to this, the next point of connection. Now we have the bridge. Then we have the freedom to deal with the in-between. But if we don't create the bridge, we don't have the freedom to deal with the in-between. Bridging is incredibly important. We must not let anything divide us. It's our responsibility to hold on to our children, hence the title of the book in English, to hold on to our children. Fifthly, always attempt to engage the attachment instincts before going to work with a child. All our natural power with children lies not in our role. It's not because I'm your mom, your dad, not because I'm your stepdad, your stepmom, your adoptive parent. It's not because I'm your teacher. Our natural power lies in the strength of their attachment to us. And so it is important for us to engage those attachment instincts. Now, how do we do this? Well, this is the first attachment ritual in all of society. I gave you the second one already, the goodbye ritual. The first one is the greeting ritual. And it's in all cultures, but we're forgetting to do this with our children. It's so simple. It's so simple. When we engage the attachment instincts, we attempt to first collect the eyes. Now the eyes can either give us a signal to get away, to distance, no, or they invite us into their presence. So the eyes are where the invitation to exist in somebody's presence are, and that's why we engage the eyes. And so the next thing when we've engaged the eyes is the next thing we try to do is get the eyes to lighten up, to smile. Because we interpret that as an invitation to exist, to come close, is that it's okay. And so we try to do things to make others smile. The main thing we do with our friends is we smile, so they'll smile. Yeah. And then we try, if that doesn't work, we try to say something that would make them smile. And so we work on this. It doesn't feel right if we can't make them smile. And so we need to make them smile first. And the next thing we'll try to do, most of us will try to do, and is that we try to get a nod. And so we'll say things like that are kind of inane things, like, it was raining yesterday. We all know that. Oh, it cleared up today. Yes, we know that. You're wearing a blue sweater today. Yes, obviously. And we say these inane things only to get a nod. And start nodding already. And so they nod. And so we get eyes, a smile, and a nod. Did you follow me? And if we get the eyes and a nod back, instinctively we know the attachment instincts are engaged. Attachment is the most powerful force in the universe. You see, we would never ask a friend for a favor. If, let's say, we decided you wanted to ride to such and such a place, and you have a friend, you're going to ask him for a favor, and you're at a gathering, you won't just say, I'm going to ask you for a favor, will you give me a ride to such and such a place? We don't do this cold. None of us would do this cold. You wouldn't be in society where you are as successful if you ever worked relationships cold. You know all how to do this. You say, you do your greeting, you get the eyes, the smile, the nod, and most of us will go at least for the third nod, and then we spring our question. Would you mind giving me a favor? Now the person is already nodding and they have to do this. Can you imagine what would happen with our children if we used a simple little mantra that before we go to work, before we ask them to set the table, put away their shoes, hang up their clothes, do their chores, whatever it is, and with our spouses, before we did this, we made sure we got the eyes, a smile, and a nod or two. And in doing this, the attachment instincts are engaged. See, this is where we were meant to do our work. This is the most important thing my wife Joy and I ever learned in parenting. This transformed with our last two sons. The reason we had so many kids is so we could get the hang of things, and so we could learn from this. But the last two boys, we figured it out. We woke up 10 minutes early to do nothing else than to get the eyes, the smile, and the nod of our boys before we started to tell them what to do and how to do it and how fast to do it and all of these kinds of things. Why? Because when you go and you start cold in the morning, come on, hurry up. What happens? They feel like slowing down. When you say, you're late for this, you're late for that, everything direction you give when you get them cold produces counterable resistance. It goes the opposite. It would absolutely transform us. Transform this. And so it's so important to engage the attachment instincts before we go to work. So if you want to change the child's mind, if you want to bring them on side with a good intention, if you want to instill a value in them of yours, if you want to confront them with something that needs confronting, make sure you engage the attachment instincts first, because if you don't, there is no desire to be good for you. If you don't have the influence and the natural power. So many of us are trying to parent cold. We try to do our work when our relationship is worst. And many parents have come to me and say, well, what can I do with my adolescent's alcohol habit or cocaine addiction? Or what can I do with their school or this? And I say to them, and that's always how I start, well, can you collect your teenager? Well, what do you mean? Well, can you get their eyes, a smile, and a nod? And then you hear this story, I haven't been able to do that for years. I say, we have a relationship problem on our hands. We have no context to deal with this until we've got the relationship that is there. And so that's what we'll have to work on. Because there's nothing else that we can do in this situation until you can get those eyes, that smile again, and those nods. And you can engage those instincts, and then we're going to work within that context. Because that's where we were meant to work, within. That's where our power lies. That's where our influence lies. Sixthly, diffuse counterwill by reducing coercion, as well as by hiding their agendas and by drawing attention to a meaningless choice. This is especially for children who do not have any integrative functioning. Counterwill is huge. Usually it's tempered in children. If they have mixed feelings, if they can say part of me feels this way and part of me feels that way, and then they can have the instinct of counterwill. Like when you're in grade 2, a child can say, well, I hate it when my teacher tells us what to do. I don't feel like doing it, but then I'd get into trouble if I didn't. Well, that's pretty healthy functioning. The counterwill is tempered. The point is that when anybody is told, any of us are told what to do, when we're coerced, when we're told how to think, how to behave, outside of that context where attachment instincts are engaged, we feel resistant, oppositional. We feel like doing as little as we have to do. This is just part of the process. Now, it's dreadful. We've given even diagnosis to children in our society of oppositional defiant disorder. That is counterwill personified. And I've worked with prisons full of these kids, all kinds of these kids. Never have we found anything wrong with the brains of such children. There is something dreadfully out of order about a society who believes it can boss children around who are not attached to you. Something dreadfully out of order about a society who thinks that just because I'm the parent, I'm the grandparent, I'm the teacher, I can tell you what to do. Because nothing in science has confirmed that that is true. Everything confirms that it's the child's attachment to us that gives us the natural power. That's why in the old times they knew that children needed to be attached to their teachers. And even contemporary science says the student-teacher relationship is the single most important pivotal factor. And all of you know this. We all know, even us teachers know, for our own children. We breathe a sigh of relief. We wait for the first 2 weeks when a child goes to school to see if they like their teacher and think the teacher likes them. Why? Because that simple thing will be the most important factor in their behavior and academic performance. The relationship. That's what it is. That's why it's so important to do this. So when we do not have that, when a child is not attached, or when we have to interact with a child when the attachment instincts are engaged, we must be careful with the amount of pressure, force, and coercion that comes from our voice. Because if we say to this 4-year-old, go flush that toilet right now, that's the last thing they want to do. It's a lot better for us to say, I didn't hear the toilet flush. That's not quite so coercive. Do you follow me? If we really want them to eat their peas, we can't make their vegetables, we can't make a big deal of it. Because the more we make a big deal out of it, if the attachment instincts are not engaged, the more trouble we have. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful with this. This is why, for those of you that came tonight, this is why you couldn't say to your 4- and 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, please go to sleep early so that we can go to the meeting tonight. Because the minute you said it, it ruined it. You couldn't let them know your agendas. Okay, and all of these kinds of things. You can't say to a child, there's a lot of things that we can never say directly to children. Sometimes we're just too blunt with this, and when we say our agendas, they're full of resistance. Instead of being able to find a way to be able to say things. If we say to a child, don't yell, it's not appropriate to yell in church, there's a scream inside of them. And we wonder why they scream. Well, we feel like it too when we, in terms of these kinds of things. It's just knowing that counterwill is alive and well in children. And we've got to work inside the relationship, diffuse it when we can. For the youngsters who have no mixed feelings, it's relatively easy. If you want to get them upstairs to go to bed, you just put their focus on little decisions. Would you like the elephant steps up the stairs or the giraffe steps up the stairs? Would you like your pink pajamas on or your blue pajamas? We'll wash the crocodiles out of your teeth or the alligators tonight. They're always going and making these little decisions, and meanwhile we walk them right to bed. Point is as soon as they got their eyes on a little decision, That's where it is. They feel satisfied, and we can have our iron will with the child. But the minute we try to impose our iron will, we've got problems. Because, again, the children feel coerced. So again, diffuse counter will where we can. So important with adolescents too. Always remember that these adolescents are full of counter will. And if you're not working inside your relationship with them, everything that they must do, they'll feel not doing. Every time there is something they have to do, it turns the opposite. Counter will is so huge. And so it's just remembering that is there and reducing the amount of coercion. Number 7, script the behavior of the immature. Instead of demanding maturity, instead of saying be nice, don't be rude, don't make her cry, don't be so mean. Instead of doing this in terms of outcome, the basic thing is think about what is bothering you there, and think about a behavior that would be the opposite. That would be what you would like that goes in the opposite direction. And so, there's all kinds of things you can do. So you don't like the way the child is expressing their frustration and hitting, but you can script it. You can say, when I get full of frustration, sometimes it makes me feel good when I just give out a good scream. And you can script it, but you have to do this when the relationship is good. And then you say, this is how we hold a baby. This is how we pet the cat. Instead of saying, don't pull the tail of the cat. It hurts them because that's an outcome based. Children without mixed feelings can't do this. And even adolescents that don't have mixed feelings don't do this very well. If they don't have mixed feelings, they don't have the ability to do outcome based kinds of things. And scripting is far more important. I find that when I keep my swear words inside of my head, I get into far less trouble. True. Very simple script. I had one of my grandsons, the oldest one, was giving us, he was a biter. He was about 2.5 years of age, and whenever he got frustrated, he just bit his mother. Mother didn't like it. And I didn't like the way his mother, my daughter, was handling it. I thought, oh my goodness, I got to be able to do something. Little Julian is full of foul frustration for a number of reasons. He's full of this. He's not finding the tears as quickly as he needs to. And so it's going into biting. I got to find a solution. So I said, well, what can I do? Well, what would be the opposite? What would be a different thing than biting his mother? Well, tantrum maybe? Oh, well, that's pretty good. Grandpa has tantrums. So I got him when the relationship was good. I was tending to some flowers and something wasn't working. And I just, this is so frustrating. Grandpa's so frustrated, this isn't working. And I had a little tantrum. Looked at me like this. Oh my goodness, what's happening to Grandpa? Yeah. A couple of more times, I had a little tantrum. I allowed, I'm so frustrated, this isn't working. And Grandpa had a little tantrum. Within 2 weeks, he was having wonderful little tantrums. Nobody was getting hit. But you see, they were scripted. I had to buy time. I had to buy time so he could find his tears about the things that were not working in his life. I had to buy time so his brain could get the integrated function. You follow me? In the meantime, I had to keep his mommy safe. Or his sister safe. Or whatever it is safe. And so the question, we're always saying cut it out when we're saying, well, how could I help here? How could I help him express his frustration that didn't hurt others? What could I do to script this? I have to do it inside of the relationship. So it's follow the leader. Grandpa, when Grandpa does this works for Grandpa sometimes. I have a big scream to get my frustration out, so this is what Grandpa does. And it's following that, and then you help in terms of that particular behavior. Number 8, don't overwork the incident. Today's parenting has become synonymous with what you do in the incident when problem behavior occurs. This should never be this. The main thing is in the incident is survive. The main thing in the incident is don't do any harm. We shouldn't try to make headway in the incidents because maturity takes time. Getting to the sadness takes time. The tears of futility takes time. Getting to the mixed feelings takes time. And so these need to be done inside of the relationship and the debriefing work. In the antecedents, what comes before, the guidelines for the incident should be very simple. Instead of trying to make headway, especially trying to teach a child a lesson, aim simply to do no harm. Address the violations simply if necessary. That's against the rules in this house. This isn't the way to express your frustration. Punctuality is important to us. Bridge the problem behavior. We'll be okay. I'm still using that. I'm looking forward to this. Attempt to change or control the situation, not the child. When a child is out of control, our biggest problem is we try to control children who are out of control themselves. We can't control children who are out of control. And we must understand that, so try to control the situation as much as possible, and then best to get out of this situation as fast as we can. We try to do too much in the incident. We try to teach lessons, and that's where we make our mistake. It's much better to make a date. We'll talk about this later, and make sure you keep that date. And then you can make sure to collect the eyes, a smile, and a nod. Work inside the relationship rather than when your emotions are high. You can't think what to do. You're not creative. Your child is defensive. And we're doing way too much in the incident. Way too much. We would do us a great deal of favor to say, okay, the incidents happen. They're just part of it. Part of life. That's what it is. Immaturity is there. Emotions are strong. It takes years to develop self-discipline, self-control. And meanwhile, to do no harm in the incidents should be our aim. Ninthly, when the child is not capable of mixed feelings, and this is especially true for the young ones and up until age 6 and 7, with the intense ones even more so, add a year or two to this if everything is going fine, this will be difficult. The whole way of managing them is not to teach them lessons or through consequences, because consequences are outcome-based. What happens when they do this? If you don't brush your teeth, then you'll have to go to the dentist. That's an outcome-based. If you don't eat your vegetables, then you'll have problems. That's outcome-based. Young children are saved from the concept of work. Work is outcome-based until they have mixed feelings. And they also believe in magic until they have mixed feelings. That's why you can do all these fun games. That's why they can see Santa Clauses on every corner and still believe there's one Santa Claus. That's why, it's just amazing what you can do. So as long as your child still believes in magic, you know the child does not understand the construct of work, that this leads to that. That's the same thing as mixed feelings. It goes together. And so the answer to this, I get asked so often with the young ones, well, how do you toilet train? How do you be able to get them to do this, to get them to do that? And this very simple answer is, inject some fun in the activity. How do you get food in them? Inject some fun in the activity. How do you get them to go pee in the toilet? Yeah. Put some Cheerios in there. Help them aim. Put some dye in the toilet. Have it change color when the pee hits the toilet. I don't know. There's 1,000 things you can do. It's fun. It's incredibly fun. So as long as your child believes in magic, don't go for outcome. Simply think, what could I do that would get to the end result? I know where I want to get to, but how do I inject some fun? See, Children without mixed feelings are on a play-based system. All young mammals play. They were meant to play. The problem is, as adults are on a work-based system. That this leads to that. This is outcome. Children don't even think in that way again until they are capable of saying, part of me feels this way and part of me feels that way. And even if an adolescent has not got there because they're stuck in immaturity, they still won't understand the construct of work, no matter how much we try to get it through their thick skull. And so true play is not work, it's not for real, it's pretend, it's expressive and exploratory, it's without repercussions. And they were meant to have this, like all mammals are meant to have a time in life in which they are free from repercussions. We're so busy trying to teach them lessons earlier and earlier, and much of this we call discipline, because again, discipline is, if you do this, then it will lead to that, is an outcome-based thing. And again, just in play, the focus is the activity and work the outcome. What engages the activity, the work is outcome. Where the fun is the activity, the outcome. And so, especially things like eating food. Oh, the more you make a point of it, the worse it gets. The more it just happens because they're having a bath, or you're reading them a story, or doing this and so on, and the magic fork just happens to go in it, the easier it is. You think, well, if I do this, it will last forever. You know, it never stops. Well, how many 60-year-olds are you still changing their diapers? You know, are you still trying the toilet trick? No, it happens. It happens. The point is that maturity will take care of this, but we need to buy time. And when we buy time, it's infusing fun into the activity. And now we'll go in the last remaining minutes here, in just 10 minutes or so here, I'll go to 3 of what I consider the most important methods of discipline. They are so underused in our society. When I get asked, well, what did you use with my own 5 children? These were the primary ones, as well as counting on their desire to be good. But these are the keys for this. And these are 3 that are appropriate for any age. In fact, these are our answers. This is what brings us to our self-discipline, to order on our behavior, because we too need to be disciplined in our conduct, civilized, considerate, and so on. And so these apply to any age. 1, as much as possible, walk all confrontations and experiences with futility all the way to sadness, but be patient with this. And the tears I'm talking about here are not simply tears of upset. They're tears of letting go. The tears of futility are very distinct. For those of you that know your physiology, there's a nervous system, an autonomic nervous system of rest and of work, interesting enough. Sympathetic nervous system is of work. The parasympathetic nervous system is of rest. And when children are trying hard to make things work, to change your mind, to do this, and they're arguing with you, and all these kinds of things, and their sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive, and they're trying to do this, and when the futility is recognized, there's a gear shift change in the amygdala, in the limbic system, and from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. And with this often come the tears of futility that actually release some of the toxins. That's why we feel so much better after we've had a good cry over something that we cannot change in life. And this is certainly true of children. It actually operates as a cleansing agent as well. And so we need to walk these. When something didn't work, they didn't get invited to a birthday party. They were up against something they could not change. They couldn't get their way. There was a loss. They didn't win. They couldn't be first. They couldn't be best. There was no more of what they wanted. And then instead of just simply trying to reason with them so they don't feel upset, this is the opposite of knowing that upset is natural, it's normal, it happens when children don't get their way. But we need to walk it all the way to the feelings of sadness and disappointment. The same is true for us, because that's where our adaptation occurs. We are not giving nearly enough room for this in our life. And when we don't, we also lose our capacity for happiness. Because for most of us, happiness lies on the other side of tears we still have not cried about the things we could not change in our life. We've lost the importance of that. This is so important. Now, do adolescent boys cry? They need to. They need to. What happens? I can remember this with Shay, our 4th child, first boy. You have this sense, oh my goodness, he's of the age where he's going to give his heart to a girl. He's going to fall in love, and he's probably going to get it broken. And he's going to need to have his tears about this. If he doesn't have his tears, it's going to get a little bit ugly, a little bit aggression and so on. He's going to have his sadness, because he's going to have a lot of things he's going to have to adapt to. I better, as a father, make sure that I can find and help him find the things that don't work in his life, to find the underside of it, a bit of sadness. It's not easy to get boys, adolescent boys, to cry. Sometimes you have to make sure all the lights are out, no attention is drawn to the eyes. You can't ever say, you need to have a good cry, you know. You can't ever be direct about these kinds of things. But the point is they need to be able to do this. If they don't move from mad to sad, there's a lost game that was important to them. Again, we have a problem with adaptation. It's so significant. Secondly, wherever we can, this 11th, but second of the primers of maturation, the best ways of being able to, what do we have? What is this? Okay, well, I can say it to you. So the next thing here, oh, that was fast. The next one here. Marcelo, the next one. Good. Instead of consequences, think antecedents. Not what comes after, but what must come before. Parents would come to me and say, how do I get my boy to stop hitting his sister? And I would say to them, well, is your boy trying to stop hitting his sister? How do I get my child to bring home his homework? Well, is your boy trying to bring his homework? Does he want to bring it? Does he have a good intention? Well, the parent would often say to me, well, that's what I'm trying to get into, is the get. You know, how can I get him to do this? And I said, no, you didn't hear me. Is your child trying to express his frustration in ways that don't hurt others? In a civilized way, is your daughter trying to handle herself or whatever it is in ways? Is there a good intention? If not, you see, we haven't finished our job. Because it's our job as parents to inculcate our values into our children. And we can only do that when the relationship is good, when their attachment instincts are engaged, and then we do our best to bring them on side with good intentions. Because if they don't have good intentions, they're not going to get anywhere. Just like us. It's not consequences that are the answer. It's good intentions. It doesn't mean that they'll get there right away, but it means they're aiming in the right direction. And it sets a stage for some sadness when they don't get there. And furthermore, it sets a stage for mixed feelings, which pushes prefrontal cortex development, which is the core to civilized, considerate, and cultured behavior, and all the virtues. So good intentions are like gold. From a behavioral point of view, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They don't count unless they have outcome. From a developmental point of view, good intentions are everything. They're the seed. When you can get a child aiming in the right direction, you have sown the seed of your values in that child. That's where it starts. It won't get there right away, but now we can hire ourselves as coach. Now we can come alongside. Now when the child says, I didn't mean to, honest, I didn't mean to, we can come alongside and say, I know you're the kind of person that didn't mean to. Here, I've got an idea to help. And now we can come alongside. But again, you can change your whole thinking from consequences to intentions. Have I yet solicited a good intention in my child? To do this, I need to get into my best place, position of power, natural power and influence, which is the child's attachment to me. And so I may need to do some attachment work before I get this. But when you've got a child with good intentions, you can be sure that you'll get there. They'll get there. It will take time, but they'll get there. And you can come alongside of this. The dance will evolve. And then thirdly, this sets the stage. The third of the triad, the trilogy of powerful interventions, discipline interventions, is his mixed feelings. When you can help a child find his mixed feelings, and good intentions will help him get there. But in the debriefing situation, when you can say, well, I know part of you felt this way, and I know you well enough to know that part of you also felt this way. Part of you didn't want to get into trouble, and part of you felt like doing this. And when you can actually go and come alongside the child, find your way to the child's side, and draw out the mixed feelings when they can do this. Even a child, for instance, a 9-year-old who's having trouble hitting you. But the child is very affectionate to you. The problem is there's no prefrontal cortex development. So the child may say, "Oh, Mommy, you're my favorite, Mommy, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you to death." And then suddenly the child says, "Mommy, can I do this?" And you say, "No, no, you can't do this." "I hate you, I want a new Mommy plow." We get frustrated with the people we love the most. That's no secret. Yeah? And so we're full of love and full of frustration, but in this 9-year-old, they're not meeting. And so even in this, when the time is good, and later in the evening, there's full of hugs and cuddles and affection, and we have the child's heart, we can feel it. We can say, "This morning you were thinking of all the worst names you could call me." You can bring them in. Now, you know that you've gone too far if the child starts hitting you again, because they weren't able to handle the dissonance involved, or if a child denies it, because they can't possibly think that they could have a feeling that conflicted with the one at the moment. Then you know, "Oh my goodness, I'll have to soft pedal this a little bit." The prefrontal cortex can't even handle the suggestion of the fact that the child can feel very frustrated with me, but want to hit me at the same time loves me. But you see the point. The point is that this is the way to true maturity. Every single one of us needs to be a tempered father, a tempered mother, a tempered grandparent. And what does tempered mean? That we're living in the mix. Why? Because when we're full of our mix, yes, there's yells in us to our children, yes there is, but when we can remember that it may not be good for them, we live in the mix. My desire is to be a tempered husband, father, teacher, scientist, whatever it is, to be in the mix. This is our challenge, and we can help them to find their mix. And when we find their mix, you can almost sense the growth in the prefrontal cortex, that we're moving more towards our ultimate desire for all of us. We all want children who are capable of courage, of patience, of virtue, of all of these, of forgiveness, of all of these things, capable of civilized and cultured behavior, who are ordered and well-tempered as individuals. This is the ultimate goal, and it's coming alongside to help us. Again, notice, it's not a cut-it-out approach. It's this too approach. And in that this too, we find the answers. Well, these are 12. We went through them very quickly. But I hope you've got the impression there is another way. So if you've drifted into the kinds of things that are, the shortcuts to good behavior, the yelling, the consequences, the facing separation, and so on, hopefully this will help bring you back to what hopefully is your good intuitions here, is that know if everything's soft, the rest will unfold in time. I think we'll end it there, and now it's time for some questions. I think we've reserved a few minutes for questions. Okay? Oh, large letters. Okay, there's a few that have to leave, and there's some questions here that I'll respond. A few questions, but I promise we won't go past the 10 o'clock, because you may have some children that you still have to collect and bridge the night with. I don't need this one. Excuse me. My kid is very quiet. How can I help him talk about his feelings? Not directly. Generally, most children don't talk about their feelings. The more we ask them about feelings, the harder it is. It is not something. It's much more to make a time and place for. The times, find times and places, meal times, if can be wonderful places for this. about talking about what worked in the day, what didn't work in the day, what was the best part of it, what wasn't. So when you feel somebody didn't understand you, when they did, what would you like to have happened yesterday? If you start making some structures and rituals around these times, and you take the lead, you find they follow very easily. If you ask them when they got home from school, well, how did it go? Fine. Well, what happened today? Nothing. And so it may not go very well at all. And so it's important to create structures and rituals around this. And I have a little story about Shay. Shay is like his father. He gets very frustrated. And so I really needed to help him with his, first of all, you can't manage an emotion that you don't recognize and label. And so we had this little ritual. I would pick him up from kindergarten. He was 5 years of age. My consulting office was just nearby. And I would pick him up from kindergarten, usually at lunchtime. We'd walk him home. We would have dinner together at home. So we'd have this little game as we go walking hand in hand. And I would go with something I really liked about my day, this and this and this. And then I would get to the frustrating, that something that didn't work for me today. And I felt frustrated and so on. And then it was his turn. So I was very quiet that day. I was in a bad mood. And we get to this place in the sidewalk. He says, Daddy, at this point in the sidewalk, you always ask me that frustrating question. Yeah. He knew the ritual well. He knew it well. But nevertheless, it helped him able to get it out. The direct approach doesn't work with feelings. Inject some fun in the activity. If you can, create structures and rituals around it. Make sure that there are times in your day where you're collecting the eyes, the smiles, and nods. But when this is, and again, meal times are perfect times for this. Don't use meal times to try to talk about the things that are wrong. Try and make times of collecting, of storytelling, of being able to get the thoughts and feelings out. They're wonderful times. When the children get used to this, even the quietest ones want their turn and feel very cheated when they don't get their turn. Second question. I have lost connection with my adolescent. I'm using separation and threats. Can I start all over again even at his age? Absolutely. The good thing about a relationship is it goes on for a long time. And yes, we can make changes in relationships. That's the good news. And so when we back off of this, the main thing is, and I ran into a problem with my oldest two girls, because even though I knew this stuff in my head, it had not fully come into my practice as a parent. I was better at consulting for other people's kids than bringing it home. And I lost my oldest two daughters to their peers. And I didn't realize what had happened, and I didn't have the relationship anymore. I'd lost that connection. I wasn't getting the smiles. I wasn't getting the nods. And I started to ride them. I started to start criticizing their behavior, their habits, and it went very badly. And got it through my head that I needed to start at the beginning. I needed to take some time and really rebuild the relationship. I took them both one-on-one to different places, wilderness places where there was nobody else there, favorite places of theirs. And I tell the story in the book, actually, in Hold On to Your Kids, in the Spanish title as well, that I can't recall just how to say right now. But in that, tell the story of how to restore the relationship. Actually, it happened very, very quickly. And it made all the difference in the world. The good news is, it's never too late. My adolescent is always on his phone or on the internet. What can I do? This is a whole new competition. It is so difficult. The digital intimacy that they experience, all the research shows, is like our food these days, increasingly empty. It doesn't nurture, it doesn't satisfy. That's why they get addicted. The more they have, the more they want. They can't control it. It's really difficult. By the time they're an adolescent, there's very little that you can do to impose structures and rituals. You've got to do this before they're 12 years of age to get a chance on it. As an adolescent, you can. But what you've got to remember is they still need you, even though they don't need it. And you've got to start working on the relationship, giving them the true nurturance for their hunger, an invitation to exist in your presence, a sense of specialness, a sense of pattering, of significance. All of these things is when you take time to nurture the relationship, that when they get the real thing, then the other is not so addictive. not so appealing. And sometimes you need to, as I did with my oldest girls, find a time where you can get away, and somehow something happens to the digital devices, or you find a place where the digital devices don't work. That's preferable. Remember when I took my girls away, there were no digital devices at that time, but I made sure that the phone cable had been disrupted and that the television didn't work because I didn't want any competition. And so I needed to be able to have time where I could get in their face in a friendly way, collect the eyes, the smile, and the nods. And sometimes those times can be incredible, but it's difficult. There's no easy answers to this, but putting structure and ritual at that point generally alone will not work. You've really got to remember they're going to need parents for life. We all kind of need to feel taken care of and so on, and go for the long term. What do you do as parents when we know that our kids' teachers have no clue of the importance of relationship? They are just worried in finishing their curriculum on time, no matter what. Well, this is part of our society, is that some teachers are very intuitive, other teachers are not necessarily intuitive. Some are teaching subjects, others are still teaching students, and know that the relationship is important. The best thing we can do, as parents, we can't tell teachers how to teach. That's not our mandate. But one of the most important rituals in our society is matchmaking. I've talked about collecting, bridging. The third one is matchmaking. And in matchmaking, what you try to do is create a relationship where there is none. And in creating a relationship where there is none, again, you're not telling a teacher how to teach, but what you're trying to do is be able to present your child in such a way that makes the teacher smile, nod, and so on. This is what I did with my own kids all the time. I would go to the athletics, the sports activities, and so on, and I would find things that the teacher said that I could bring home to my kids and make them, that made the kids think the teacher liked them. And then I took things that my kids said and went and I saddled up to the teacher and said the things that made the teacher think my kid liked them. Now, it was pure matchmaking. You're allowed in matchmaking to cheat. In actual fact, often they didn't like each other at all. But then they'd go to class and they would nod, smile at each other, thinking they liked each other. And pretty soon the relationship would start warming up. There's a lot that we can do about creating the relationships our children need. And some of it is just pure matchmaking. Endearing our children to their teachers and the teachers to our children and so on. The same is true for endearing our children to their grandparents and grandparents to children. We've made the interface talking about problems. And when we go to talk about problems, everything goes wrong. Instead of being able to build the relationships that creates the context for talking about those problems. So our interface needs to change in the parent-teacher relationship. Is it wrong to tell your kid to stop crying when they're frustrated or making a tantrum? Well, that's easy. Yes, it is. Are you going to talk about discipline in the Alpha Child Conference? No, not really. Just how difficult we are to discipline. So you have to come back here for the other part. Was I too quick about, is it wrong to tell your kid to stop crying when they're frustrated? I mean, you get that now, right? Yeah, yes, it is. It is. Even if the tears are not tears of futility, if they're tears of sheer upset, still you want to get them going in that direction. And so tears are very, very important. We must make room for them, even if they're mock tears, because if you have an Asperger's child or an autistic child, often when they first find their tears, they actually have no tears with them. They're just actions and noises that are like crying. And you've got to go with it. And sometimes it feels like children are trying to manipulate you with their tears. Well, the only time a child can ever manipulate an adult by their tears is an adult who's afraid of their tears. So whose problem is that? It's our problem. If we're not afraid of their tears, it's impossible to be manipulated with it. Well, what child? I mean, if a child figures out, well, Daddy's scared of me crying, and I can get my way when I shed some tears. Well, what kid who's got half a brain wouldn't figure that out? We mustn't blame the kid for figuring that out. That's only natural. It's our problem that we're afraid of tears. As soon as we're no longer afraid of tears, as soon as we can welcome them, the problem goes away and the manipulation goes away. And when a child is too rational and he can understand reasons but doesn't cry, is he mature? No, that's a problem with most of us. The problem is we can't adapt through reason. We may know something doesn't work. You may know perfectly that a particular kind of interaction with your spouse doesn't work. You can know that, and yet you can engage in it for 1,000 times, doing the same thing that you know doesn't work. It's not changing you, and it's not changing the relationship, because you're not adapting to it because you haven't had your sadness about it. It's the sadness that is there. We may know that our loved one died, but adaptation is an emotional process. We know they're dead, but if they were an important person to us, it's going to take months, years of finding our tears when we think of them and the hole that remains, to be able to adapt, to being able to live without them here. And that's the whole point of adaptation. Adaptation is not rational. It's not enough to know. We have to have our feelings. And our children have to have our feelings. So it's not enough to reason with them. Yes, there may be good reasons, but reason is not enough. They need to be able to find their sadness about the things that do not work in their life. Well, thank you. It's been a delight to be here with you.